let's get into some of our favorite potential names for the Orioles number 17 pick. We threw out some names last week. Want to go a little bit more in depth here on this show. First name I had, and I think the first name that I threw out last week, was Bryce Eldridge. He is listed as a first baseman / right-handed pitcher, 18 years old, committed to Alabama. He is 6'7" and over 220 pounds as an 18-year-old. A 18-year-old left-handed bat at 6'7". He's listed as a first baseman, I think mostly because he is a pretty talented pitcher. He has the potential to be a two-way player, might be the best two-way player in this draft, and played first base in high school, presumably because they wanted to save his arm for his pitching outings. Yeah. But I think he probably profiles as an outfielder. Scouts seem to be leaning more towards Eldridge as a corner outfielder rather than a pitcher. He doesn't have a great feel for spinning the ball as a pitcher, so probably would be a little bit harder to develop on the mound than he would be at the plate. But some scouts have said that he has double plus raw power from the left side of the plate as a 6'7", 18-year-old kid. And when you are looking at the bats that the Orioles have drafted, we talked about it last week. The profile is good raw power, good swing and miss rates. Bryce Eldridge has all of that. His tools have been called an abundance of riches. And I think that
you find like the most whimsical.
I'm always looking for the whimsical scouting profiles here with players.
Of players ever.
Future Stars series says that he has an abundance of riches of tools, short swing, excellent bat speed, strong exit velos. I think he could be a slam dunk at number 17 if the Orioles want to go with a high school bat.
Yes. He mashes high school pitching. I mean, the guy hits over 500. He has like 12 extra base hits, 30 RBIs in 19 games or whatever the stat was. He's unreal. And I think a guy that you take out of high school and you could develop into a guy that might, be up around number 1 again if you want to go for the 4P.
The ceiling is huge with Eldridge.
The ceiling is huge. That's the thing. But I just have a feeling when you look at that list that we just talked about, the only thing you don't see is a pitcher, right?
Yeah.
I have a feeling that they're going to go with an arm. That's the one thing this organization, I don't want to say needs because it probably doesn't, but when you look at that farm system, it's the only thing that's kind of lacking. Of course, you have Grayson Rodriguez, and he's fantastic, and he's gross, but I'm not necessarily sure that that's going to do it in the long run.
Yeah, and lacking, I think there is just a relative term to what the hitters look like in this system, because when you look at the Orioles' top 10 prospects right now, yes, it is stacked with hitters. That's just how the Orioles have kind of drafted here over the last few years, as you mentioned. But the Orioles have traded for quality pitching prospects like Cade Povich, like Chase McDermott, Seth Johnson. There are guys in this system outside of Grayson Rodriguez. Of course, you can't forget about DL Hall. Drew Rahm has looked pretty solid at AAA Norfolk to start the season. There are still pitching prospects, but you're right. When you look at the top 10 in this system, there aren't a ton of pitchers just because that's not really how you've drafted. So is there a pitcher in mind, Bones, at number 17 that you like?
Two.
You've got two?
I've got two. We talked about them both last week.
Okay.
I like Hurston Waldrop a lot. I mean, his numbers are fantastic. Over 150 strikeouts in under 100 innings pitched, like 99 and a third or something. So, cheating a little bit there. But, like you said, he's got that hoppy fastball. Some would even call it a goopy fastball.
Goopy?
Yeah, I just made that one up. Just yeah, he's fantastic. He's a high ERA, high strikeout guy.
Yeah.
Which is something I think that organizations don't mind, because if you're striking guys out, they can fix you. Especially one like the Orioles that has a knack for fixing arms and loving SEC power arms, as we learned.
Yeah.
So he's definitely a guy I'm looking at. Just lost the College World Series. That probably hurt. But he's a fantastic, fantastic pitcher. And a guy that I could totally see them taking at 17.
Yeah, it makes me think of a guy that the Orioles just recently drafted in Trace Bright out of Auburn. He was not a first-round pick, but as you mentioned, I don't think the Orioles are staring at ERA. We know the Orioles look...
Archaic stat.
Yeah. ERA, whatever. Trace Bright had a 5.13 ERA in his final season at Auburn, went 5-4 with that 5.13. Struck out close to 11 batters per 9 innings. The Orioles clearly liked what he had just stuff-wise, arm-wise. The ERA didn't really matter to them. And then Trace Bright, the ERA has gone up a little bit at Aberdeen, but had a pretty unbelievable start in his first few games of the season. So obviously the Orioles liked the potential there and didn't really pay attention to the ERA numbers, which would certainly be the case for Hurston Waldrop. And as you mentioned, the pitches are fantastic. The hoppy fastball, the splitter is unbelievable. I think he is certainly a possibility at number 17. Is the other pitcher you liked, Bones, was it Chase Dolander?
Yes, it was. I like Dolander a lot. 4 pitches. He's got a fastball, curveball, changeup, slider. He's a guy that touches 100 in college, which for me makes me a little weary sometimes because I always feel like Tommy John's going to happen eventually. Obviously, I don't want anybody to get injured.
Yeah, drafting pitchers is hard. We talked about it last week, but yeah.
Dolander, though, another guy, 4.75 ERA this past season, so not exactly where you'd like it. But again, I don't think they care because those strikeout numbers are really high as well. So Dolander, a guy I could also see them taking. You said that it might be a reach, though, you think?
No, I think Dolander would have to slide.
Oh, yes.
I mean, coming into the season, Dolander struggled a little bit this year in the SEC. Coming into the season, Dolander was looked at as a potential number 1 pick.
Yeah.
Number 2 pick, maybe, after Dylan Cruz. And he has slid a little bit because of the command issues. The ERA has not been great. The walk numbers are a little bit high. But if you're just looking at the stuff, I mean, he's a top 5, top 10 guy. So I think he'd have to slide a little bit for the Orioles at number 17, but I think he would certainly be a possibility if he gets there.
Yeah, for sure. And for a guy like that, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I always like the guys who had the hype and then lost it. Maybe because I
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know why. It's just something I've always
You just fall in love with the initial hype?
Well, it's more like I know that they knew that they had the hype and they knew.
You knew that they knew that you knew that they knew.
Exactly.
Right.
Precisely.
Right.
So they got that dog in them. That's basically what I'm trying to say. And they're looking to prove people wrong because people were on the train, then they got off quickly. They hopped on the Paul Skeens train.
Yeah.
Chase Dolander's sitting there like, oh, I'm counting every single one of you that got off the train. Probably isn't, but in my head,
You're a chip on the shoulder guy.
In my head, he definitely is. And I like a guy with a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah.
Pounding 102 with a sweet curveball, with a malty curveball.
That'll play.